Your higher self is the version of you pretty close to the time you were born. It's the version of you without the family trauma, without the emotional trauma from growing up, without the bullshit that people tell you throughout your life, that governments tell you, that schools tell you, that families tell you, that companies tell you, that jobs tell you. That version of you that has never had to deal with the bullshit that you've been carrying is your higher self. It has, I hate saying it, your higher self has the perspective of complete and utter love and compassion for everything and everyone. It's not afraid of being nice. It's not afraid of showing emotion. It's not afraid of caring. It's not afraid of hugging. It's not afraid of all the things that we tell people to be afraid of. Because it doesn't have to be. It doesn't come from the perspective of the experience that you might have, or the information that people told you. Boys shouldn't cry, right? It doesn't have that. Because again, your higher self is pretty close to the point of when you were born, so it doesn't have to carry all that crap with it. The value of having your higher self, for me, was that I was able to almost, and still am, kind of refer to them in an instance where I was trying to figure out what I needed to do to achieve my goals, or to get through trauma, or to forgive myself, or whatever it was. They were the ones that I would refer to because they knew how to come at it with love and ease instead of fear and anger and lack and all of the other emotions that we add on to the unnecessarily add on to our experience. Your higher self is there to show you an example of what it could be when you lead a life of love. And you can see it as kind of this separate entity, but I sometimes see it as like the version of myself, and this is not necessarily the healthiest way to look at it, but the version of myself that I will be when I am completely, in quotations, healed. Now that's a whole nother conversation, because when we talk about being healed, it's a lifelong process. You're like, the more trauma you have, the more like you have to work through. If you're not even thinking about the trauma you have, you're not even close to being close to your higher self, because you don't even understand the work that you have to do. So it's not necessarily like this goal you're trying to reach. But for me, it's trying to get as close as I can to being able to let go of all the crap that I don't need to hold on to, and to be able to see the world in a different way so that I can walk through it in the way that I want to, not in the way that people told me I should, with their fears and their judgments and their bullshit. I get to decide. I have that sovereignty, that self-sovereignty, to be able to take what works and leave the rest. And so when I think of my higher self, I'm always trying to like think of the ways in which I would make a decision if I were living in that truth versus the truth that I'm currently living in, which is the one that has more of the trauma that needs to be unpacked, and the more, the issues that I carry with me. It's a sense of comfort for me because I get to rely on another perspective than just my own. whenever I want. So when I think of the fact that my higher self is just the being I was before all the crap, I get to see life and the world and people and experiences and problems with in a whole different lens, because I'm not, in that instance where I'm doing that, I'm not the same person. And to me, that just, it's helpful. It's helpful to have that perspective whenever I want. It's helpful to be able to rely on that perspective. And you can call me crazy or whatever you want. Sometimes I also talk to my higher self. And my higher self is just me, but the version of me that isn't carrying the weight that I carry, and the trauma that I've created or have been passed, that I've been given. So when you think of your higher self, imagine who that might be. Imagine who it could be, who you would be if you didn't have the things that were bothering you today, or the traumas that you've been through. And how could that serve you? How could that higher self perspective be a resource for you? Because it can. But you really have to just kind of let go of the idea that the things that we carry with us we always have to carry. Because it's not true. You can work through things, and I'm not saying that everything is just an easy load you can unload. People have some deep traumas and some really harsh experiences. But even just the practice of asking yourself, what could that higher perspective be? What would that higher perspective advice be? Is already living in a different reality than you were if you didn't have that going through your mind. Because now you're not just living life as you're asking the question, what would life be like, and how would, even if that person didn't have the same traumas, how would they look at what I'm going through now in a way that's actually with love instead of fear? And I think that's, again, all of this is really just about my perspective. I choose to look at life with love and ease, and it's a constant question of, okay, here's this thing that's happening. How do I look at this with love instead of fear? Whatever it is, it's always that question for me. And it's not necessarily something that I always get to answer in the way that I want to. But just in asking the question, it gives me a sense of ease and a sense of control. And not necessarily control, because I can't always change the situation, but a sense of power where I can see my power in it. And that power, that perspective, all comes from understanding, a lot of things, but understanding my higher self. That higher self is there. That higher self can see you for who you are and can love you anyway. And sometimes the work really becomes being able to reflect that. And it's not always easy, but it does change the way you look at the world. People's opinions become less important. Achievements become less important, and the external validation becomes less important, because now you're not trying to live for other people. You're just trying to live for yourself. And the view of your higher self, the perspective of your higher self, can help you put that in perspective. And that's a cool tool to have. So, yeah, use it.